the sea at the 12-mile line. There are also some quite big cultural concerns that many that are coming from countries where women are not even regarded as being second-class citizens has led to an upsurge in sexual violence. And of course, Nuneaton is just down the road from where I'm speaking today, where we recently saw the conviction of a man for raping a 12-year-old girl. There is not a single week that goes by when you do not see a story like this in the news. But there are, of course, some even more extreme cases, and the case of Brianna White is perhaps the most shocking that we've seen to date. If you recall the incident, she was murdered by somebody who'd come from Sudan on a boat, stabbed 23 times in 90 seconds with a screwdriver. A genuinely horrific case. What strikes me about this case is I know people, we all know people, who've lost children, who've lost young adults, and it can be a sickness, it can be a car accident, a motorbike crash, and these things are horrible. But in many ways, what happened to Brianna White was totally avoidable in every single way. In almost every single country in the world, if you enter illegally, you are banged up, in prison, and deported. Somehow the European Union has got itself into a different place. We have been insisting now for years that we not only have to leave the ECHR, but that anyone that comes in the back of a lorry on a small boat is immediately detained and not free to walk the streets. I will now hand over to Siobhan White, who will tell us a little bit about what happened to her daughter, what the impact is on her family, and what her reflections are on it now. Thank you.
Yeah, Rhiannon was stabbed October 24 by a migrant who had been in this country 11 weeks. He had fled North Sudan for his own safety, apparently. We didn't know, Rihanna didn't know him. She just worked in a hotel where she looked after them, basically. He took Rihanna's life in 90 seconds, stabbed her through the main brainstem, basically, was the main place that killed her. He has never shown any remorse. He called forensics liars. He just didn't care. He wouldn't tell us why. He just denied everything. So we've had to live with that. Why? Her little boy's been left without a mum. My children have been left without their sister. And I've lost my daughter. For these scumbags that are allowed into this country illegally, yeah, something needs to be done. They need to stop allowing them in, because if it's not Rhiannon, who next? And sadly, there's children, you know, young girls getting raped. When's the next murder and a family having to go through what we're going through? Yeah.
It's all too real. Thank you for doing that. Very brave.
Okay.
And very difficult. I fully understand. Well, I think those words are very powerful. Who next? And there is nothing being done to change any of this. There is no plan with the French, and it doesn't really matter how much money we send them, because we've already given them £800 million to stop this since 2014. And I think cases like this genuinely outrage the British public, as they should. This murder, this death, was wholly unnecessary in every way. I'm going to open up now for questions on this subject and on any other, starting with Catherine Forster from GB News.
Thank you. The first duty of government is to keep its citizens safe. How do you feel the Prime Minister is faring, both in terms of people crossing the Channel and also our defence more broadly? And also, if I may, Nigel Farage, you want to be Prime Minister. If you were Prime Minister now, would you give America permission to use British air bases for attacks on civilian infrastructure in Iran that the US President is threatening? Thank you.
There's a lot there you've just asked. I mean, frankly, the people that are ultimately guilty for Rhiannon's murder are the British government. It's the British government who, despite massive public demand for something to be done, have seen absolutely nothing done. A previous government that promised they'd stop the boats, this government that said they would smash the gangs. I very fair isn't one of any kind at all. And so I personally blame the government. I think you feel the same way, don't you?
Starmer and the government, yeah.
Yeah, well, you couldn't get a clearer answer than that. Defence more generally, what defence? Took us 3 weeks and 1 day to send a single naval vessel in British sovereign territory in Cyprus. We also have 242 former members of British Special Forces now facing prosecution for what they did on operations going back in some cases over 50 years. Massive recruitment problems right throughout the armed forces, and a Prime Minister who himself has been directly engaged in the prosecution of former British servicemen. I would say our defence is in tatters. What has happened in the last few weeks should serve as a massive wake-up call. And I think the situation is absolutely dire. As far as America is concerned, well, we've refused permission to use the base. An RAF base was attacked anyway. Then the Prime Minister U-turned and said the Americans could use the bases, but for defensive purposes, whatever that in a situation of war may mean. I have a major, major worry that the relationship with America is looking very broken. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Biden in the White House. You know, we've got to face a fact, linking back to your previous question, that without America, we are virtually defenceless. So if I was the British Prime Minister, I'd say to Trump, what is the aim? What is the objective? What is the end game? What is the way out? And provided I receive satisfactory answers to those questions, I would say the continued use of our bases was the right thing to do. I think for us to finish up, breaking the alliance with America would put this country in very grave peril. And I certainly do not believe that a European Defence Force or a European army would be an answer in any way at all. Moving on, Lewis Warner, ITV News Central.
Hello, thank you. The Tories say you've been cold calling people in Birmingham, basically begging them to stand in the local elections. Is that true? Have you been cold calling people? Are you struggling to get enough candidates? Or can you promise that you will have a full slate of candidates across the West Midlands?
I can promise you right now there'll be a full slate of candidates across the West Midlands. End of. What I can also tell you is that the other party, I mean, the Labour Party have actually been advertising online for candidates in the northeast of England.
Have you been cold calling people, though?
No, cold calling would be very, very fruitless, wouldn't it? Have we called paid-up members of the party to see if they want to get engaged? I think you'll find, Lewis, across the country, I mean, I've given you a West Midlands answer. I think you'll find across the whole of the country with over 5,000 candidates, if you include Scotland and Wales as well, that all parties are, we know all parties are running very, very fast. The deadline's 11 a.m. on the 9th, so in 2 days' time. So everyone's got to struggle on. But from the West Midlands perspective, I can assure you there's a full list. And let me add, for your region, taking place. If it wasn't for the fact that we'd applied and been granted a judicial review in the High Court and the government caved in. There are 4.6 million people, including many in the West Midlands, who only have a vote because we pushed legally for it to happen. And the Labour Party and the Tories in bits of England they control were perfectly happy for the vote not to happen, in some cases, for a second year in a row. Truth, and if you're paying council tax, you jolly well deserve to have a say on who is running your local government. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Hardy, Daily Mail.
Good afternoon. What Reform's position is exactly. People are currently being housed at the taxpayers' expense. And if I may as well, Mrs. White, I know that you've been very critical. You've been given confidence about what you've heard from Nigel Farage and Reform UK about their vision for how they tackle the problems that you...
Yeah, but again, it's not about politics for me. It's about getting my daughter's story out there. And they're not being helped, but they're allowing these migrants in, and their families and other people's families. Something needs to be done. It needs.
Bose of the hotels was me in Bromsgrove. I came up to Bromsgrove in 2020. A whole load of young men had just been put in there, and I went and tried to film it. And of course, you know, the hotel story has been an outrage, but actually the HMOs are worse. Because where anyone with a property can let it through this, and you find yourself living in a suburban street, and suddenly there are 15 young men living next door. Happens is 97% stay, ultimately get waved through the refugees used in Germany and other countries like that from certain locations of the social housing list. And I think this really is what Siobhan's referring to.
Well, it is, because, I mean, the scumbag that killed Rhiannon, he was denied asylum in Germany and Italy.
Yeah.
And we don't know why, but he managed to get into France and come here.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, yeah. So what should happen to the tens of thousands living in HM? Have entered this country illegally, under any circumstances, ever be given the right, that is, and not allowed to stay. And if you don't do that, then you know, we talked this morning about, but what we haven't talked about is national security. How many of these young men, I mean, imagine, even if 1% of the young men that come have sympathies with ISIS, are we not potentially storing up terrorism problems for the future? And I genuinely believe that to be the case. I know that certainly the security, that's the case. It almost goes back to the first duty of government is to protect the country and its citizens. Very clearly, we are not protecting the country and to the previous government. Underestimate the level of public upset and anger and fury over this. Peter Schnettbangers from The Telegraph.
Hi, Nigel. I want to go back on small boats. Last August, in Operation Restoring Justice, party said that illegal migrants would be offered a financial incentive to self-deport. Taking inspiration, or had taken inspiration, announced that failed asylum seekers a financial incentive to leave. It's a joke and a farce. So I guess my question is to offer a financial incentive at taxpayers.
All very flattering that Shabama Mahmood used, although she hasn't copied us quite as much as we come out with a few months later. Look, what we said was there are people living illegally in Britain, you know, we will to their country of return, and that would mean you pay for their transport and a small sum of money for when they arrive. And if that's the best way, Jack's question, if that's the fastest way of doing it, then you do it. You look at America, where deportation policies are very controversial, but 3/4 of the illegals that have left America under this administration have gone, we know you shouldn't be here, you know you shouldn't be here, we'll pay your flight and give you $1,000. And by the way, if you want to reapply for a skills visa, we won't discriminate against you. And that has worked. And so you're looking at nearly 1.5 million people who entered America illegally, all of which goes to prove it actually can be done. But
so is it around £1,000 potentially?
It would be maximum £1,000, not the full Shababa Mahmood is seeking to offer. But you know, you have to find a way of making this work, and I think that would work. Ross Slater from The Sun.
Hello. You've always been a big supporter of freedom of speech. Kanye West be allowed to be cancelled?
If I wouldn't buy a ticket, I wouldn't recommend anyone buys a ticket. I think really vile. The sort of anti-Semitism, stroke Nazism that he's gone down is vile. But people from entering the country because we don't like what they say, I worry where that ends up. I worry where that ends up. I mean, if Keir Starmer was to ban people coming into Britain with whose views he doesn't like, almost nobody would be allowed in. So I think it's a dangerous path. The sponsors are withdrawing already. The festival itself is threatened, and I suspect very few people will buy tickets. I suspect the free market. But I'm not going to go down the route of banning people, even if I think what they say is thoroughly objectionable. Unless, of course, the line's crossed and you see it as direct incitement to violence. That is where we would draw the line on any free speech. If people thought he was genuinely going to come into Britain and urge attacks on the Jewish community, then there would be full grounds for stopping him. If it's just bans are a slippery slope. Thank you. Daisy Eastlake from The Times.
Announcement
yes.
About visas. Would you backdate the block on all visas for people from countries demanding taking back those that have already been granted? Estimates or modelling on how much this policy would cost that you can share with us, how it would impact affected sectors, particularly like the care sector?
Costings on this. We've given 6.6 that say we're the most awful people that have ever lived on the face of the planet. We owe them reparations. 6.6 billion quid we've given them over the course of a last 8 million of their citizens, some of whom, of course, do work in the care sector, many of whom live on benefits. Today, if they've got several children, will have seen their family income go up massively as a result of the two-child cap. About time we stopped the United Nations, with its increasing politicisation, effectively using to attack everything this country is. And there are parts of our past we wouldn't be proud of, including uniquely being the one country that spent 4 decades on the high seas at the loss of thousands of sailors and vast amounts of money driving slavery off the world's oceans. So sense of proportion. It's about time we stood up and